I'm starting out in Pennsylvania. Politics is very much at the forefront of people's minds. I'm at Pennsylvania State University. It's a campus battleground. Here, they want their vote to be heard. And as the sun sets over State College, the students turn up in droves.
Trump! Is that Trump? What are you guys voting for? Trump or for communists? I haven't decided.
They were waiting for Vivek Ramaswamy. He's a Trump advocate and former Republican presidential nominee. The tour was basically advertised on how Gen Z have been brainwashed by the government and media.
We've seen peak wokeness, and I do think that peak racial wokeness, at least in recent years, is probably behind us. I think it's important and instructive because a lot of the new trends that are coming up, from LGBTQ ideology to climate ideology, the same pattern still repeats itself.
Hundreds of students lined the campus to get into the event, and most were pretty clear on who they were voting for.
I feel like everyone kind of feels that the system's rigged, that our government system, there's a lot of problems with it, and he's willing to actually admit that, yeah, there's problems with it and people abuse the system.
The tour felt like a war on wokeness, and students were quick to highlight the culture wars.
When I talk to woke people, they all feel like they're in an echo chamber saying the same talking points, and when you try to ask them questions, it's always a shutdown, not having a conversation about it. If that's what it means to be woke, I'm not woke.
A lot of younger Republican students are starting to find their voice and actually talk. I think before, they didn't care enough to go out and vocalize their issues, but I think now it's becoming a lot more vocal.
Now, broadly speaking, it did feel like the crowd was dominated with more male voters. So who is influencing that vote?
If you're a young man, then you're starting to lean heavily to the right, I feel. But if United States, at least, culture is downstream from politics. So a lot of people are very passionate about getting their personal cultural preferences into the office.
The next day, despite the Trump flags, it was the Democrats' turn. Heading down to town, you could see the brat voters were out in force. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, famously popular among liberal voters, was coming to deliver a speech on campus.
It's my first kind of rally event that I've ever been to, so I'm super, super excited.
Just like last night, the rally was equally busy, all there to show their support for Kamala.
It's access to healthcare, it's gun rights, it's abortion, it's a lot of different things going into this for me, so yeah.
To me, Kamala is standing up for democracy and standing up for rights and the Constitution, and I believe Trump isn't standing up for that.
And with the backdrop of a Republican demonstration just across the road, students stood their ground.
Wait, sorry, can you repeat that?
You will eat and love it if you vote for her.
She's the voice that I think younger people feel more connected to. The policies that she is vying for, and just the social and even financial viewpoints that she has definitely align more with the younger generation.
One Democrat outside the rally felt like she had a grip on why many young male voters could be turning away from Kamala.
I think Gen Z men find it to fit in. They need to support the male candidate instead of the woman.
I think maybe the right-wing media is perhaps feeding on their insecurities, perhaps, of being a young male or something, I don't know.
Hundreds poured into the theatre ready for AOC's speech and went wild as they waited for her. Watching on, she definitely played to the liberal narrative for the students sat in front of her.
More students that couldn't get in outside. The Democrats have definitely captured the brat vote. You'd never get a reaction like this for politicians at UK universities. I just wonder if the Democrat voice outweighs the Republican voice on this campus.
The event felt so different to the day before. Anti-woke versus wide awake, and seemingly young men versus young women. Hey, why don't you think the Democrats appeal to young male voters anymore?
I think that what we're dealing with right now is a lot of the consequences of radicalization, right-wing radicalization in online spaces, from YouTube, TikTok. There's kind of been this whole cliche about podcast bros and whatnot. And I think that while while there are criticisms of the perspectives that get and like kind of the toxicity that gets put online, it's also important that we meet people where they're at, and being able to go and do that and be in those spaces.
It was clear there were deep divisions of opinion wrapped up with cultural and social politics on this campus. It was in the restaurant next door where the waitress summed up the events of the last few days.
When we looked across the street and we saw, all the Trump signs and stuff like that, it just kind of brought back a sense of like where our country's at right now. And it feels very divided, and yet I didn't even realize that this long line, which wrapped around the entire street, was all here for AOC. And it brought me to tears because it reminded me that this isn't as much of a division as we think, and that a lot of people do want to come together and to generally bring in a presidency that's going to move all of us together for a greater future. So it was really important and really special today.